third stage will hot fire, basically firing just before the separation of the core stage. You saw the fire at that lattice structure towards the middle of the spacecraft. And then will continue to burn for until the 8-minute 45-second mark into the flight. And at that point, the Soyuz will be in its preliminary orbit. The entire duration of that ascent is about 8 minutes 45 seconds. A few seconds later, the solar arrays will deploy, and it will continue its 6-hour journey, 4 orbits around the Earth to meet up with the International Space Station. Now just about 15 minutes from launch, everything tracking for an on-time liftoff today. Again, 2:15 p.m. Central Time here, 12:14 a.m. out at the launch site in Baikonur, March 15th. The Soyuz MS-12 spacecraft is scheduled to dock to the orbiting complex later today for that 4-orbit 6-hour rendezvous after today's launch. The planned one-day rendezvous will culminate with a docking to the space station's ROSCOSMOS module, scheduled for 8:07 p.m. March 14th Central Time, 4:07 a.m. March 15th in Moscow, and 6:07 a.m. March 15th in Baikonur. In Baikonur, where Russian and American dignitaries, guests, and family will be watching the events unfold from a hotel not too far from the launch site in Kazakhstan. Again, you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz MS-12 at the launch pad 1 in Baikonur. Liftoff scheduled for 12:14 p.m. Central Time, 12:14 a.m. local time in Baikonur, just under 15 minutes from now. Atop the rocket and within the Soyuz spacecraft again, NASA astronauts Nick Hague, ROSCOSMOS cosmonaut Aleksey Ovchinin and commander of the spacecraft, and NASA astronaut Christina Cook. Now just under 14 minutes from launch. I'm Gary Jordan from here in Mission Control, Houston. We are answering your questions today live using the hashtag AskNASA. Please keep sending those in on Twitter with that hashtag. We have plenty of questions coming in now. This one's coming from Faye, asking, is this going to be the last time the Soyuz spacecraft is going to be used? Of course, we have an exciting year ahead of us. Even just over a week ago at this point was the successful completion of the SpaceX Demo 1 mission to demonstrate the capabilities of its future crew vehicle. Boeing Starliner will be testing their spacecraft later this year, and then will begin a regular cadence of crewed flights to the International Space Station. This will therefore end our sole reliance on the Soyuz spacecraft, but it can be used if necessary. There's another one from Utkarsh asking, how much time will the crew take to board the International Space Station after launch? Shortly after liftoff, the scheduled docking time for the Soyuz-Fg crew, the MS-12 vehicle, is scheduled to occur later tonight over the course of 6 hours. 2 hours later, the hatches will open and they'll begin and they'll enter the vehicle and provide a short welcoming ceremony, talking to friends and family on the ground, positioned in a hotel not too far from the launch site in Kazakhstan. Shortly after that, there will be a safety briefing, and then not too long after that, they'll head right to sleep. It's been a long day for the crew on board the Soyuz MS-12 vehicle, as well as the crew aboard the International Space Station, now just waking up from a short nap to help with some of those activities that'll occur aboard the International Space Station GMT time, looking to dock at about shortly after 1 in the morning their time. So they'll be shifting their schedule. Again, keep sending in those great questions using the hashtag AskNASA. We'll be answering them live here during today's coverage. Again, Soyuz MS-12 situated there at the launch pad just over 10 minutes from launch. The whole Soyuz spacecraft is 23.5 feet long, weighs 15,650 pounds, and comprises of 3 separate modules. The descent module, situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicle, contains customized seats for the crew members during launch, entry, and landing. It contains all the controls and displays necessary for the flight. It also contains life support systems, batteries for re-entry and landing, and the parachutes and soft landing rocket engines to slow down the Soyuz just before touchdown when the Soyuz lands in the steppes of Kazakhstan. There are 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module that are used to control the spacecraft's orientation or attitude during the descent until parachute deployment. It also has guidance, navigation, and control system to maneuver the vehicle during mainly this descent phase of the mission. The descent module weighs 6,393 pounds with a habitable volume of 141 cubic feet. Approximately 110 pounds of payload can be returned to Earth in this module. The descent module is the only portion of the Soyuz that survives the return to Earth. The orbital module at the top connects the descent module via a pressurized hatch you see opening now during this clip. It's where the crew has a small amount of room to move around during the flight to the station. It has a volume of 230 cubic feet with a docking mechanism, hatch, and rendezvous antennas located at the front end. The docking mechanism is used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allows entry into the orbiting complex. The rendezvous antennas are used by the automated docking system, which uses radar to maneuver towards the station for docking. There's also a forward-looking window into the module that the crew can use to take manual measurements of distance and closing speed with a laser rangefinder in the event of a failure of the rendezvous radar system. The essential propulsion module houses the oxygen storage tanks, the main engine, the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communications and control equipment. The propulsion portion of this module handles all the orbital maneuvers, including those needed for the rendezvous with the space station and the deorbit burn at the end of the spacecraft's mission. Before they are deployed, the 2 solar arrays are folded against the body of the propulsion module, which separates from the descent module after the deorbit burn, along with the orbital module. The solar panels span almost 35 feet. The entire spacecraft serves not only as a crew transport vehicle to and from the International Space Station, but also as an emergency return vehicle in the event the crew should have to leave the station unexpectedly.
This is Berlock 1. We can't hear the music.
Back at the launch site, the launch vehicle's control systems are being prepared and the gyros were just activated a few minutes ago. A group of NASA representatives is there in Baikonur, just a short distance away from the launch pad. For an update on activities there, let's go now to NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius.
Gary, 5 months have passed since that day in October when Nick Hauge and Aleksey Ovchinin endured the launch abort that triggered a plethora of replanning by NASA, ROSCOSMOS, and the rest of the international partnership. Today it is take 2 for Hauge and Ovchinin as an astronaut and cosmonaut who have trained together for 2.5 years, prepare to complete their journey to the International Space Station, this time along with NASA crewmate Christina Cook. A large throng of VIPs and family members are on hand today, NASA represented by Bill Gerstenmaier, the Associate Administrator for Human Exploration. The ISS program is represented by Deputy Program Manager Joel Montalbano. This launch comes less than 2 weeks after the inaugural flight of the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft that ushered in the commercial crew program era. and a little over a week before the start of a trio of spacewalks by 4 astronauts to continue upgrades to the station's power and communication systems. Today's launch to finally bring Hauge and Ovchinin to the station has also brought an air of anticipation here at the launch site. It's an exercise in reprise rocketry, the stage set for a skylighting show on this midnight ride to the International Outpost. That's it from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Now back to you at Mission Control in Houston.
Thank you, Rob. We are now just under 7 minutes from launch. Pre-launch operations are complete at this time. At this point in the countdown, the Soyuz's first and second stage engines are ready for launch, and telemetry has been received from the rocket indicating that all primary and backup systems are ready for launch. Not too long ago, the crew aboard the MS-12 vehicle, a live view that you're seeing now, waving and giving good vibes that the crew on board are feeling good this close to launch. The launch of Soyuz MS-12 is timed precisely for the moment when the Earth's rotation will place the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the plane of the orbit of the International Space Station. Now under 6 minutes from launch. At this time, the launch key has been inserted into the launch bunker. It's a real key, and it transitions the vehicle into launch sequence into automatic mode. In-cabin views of the Soyuz MS-12 crew shaking hands just here about 5 minutes from launch.
Launch key inserted.
At this point, the onboard systems will be getting to switch to onboard control. The commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated, and the crew members are closing their helmets, putting the suits on oxygen. At 4 minutes 13 seconds now from launch, the space station is flying directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome. On time for a launch just 4 minutes from now.
Combustion chamber nitrogen purge.
You're hearing the calls from Mission Control Moscow. Good purge, all the milestones counting down to an on-time launch being conducted so far. The fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines purged with nitrogen basically to fireproof them by removing vapors of fuel and oxidizer.
Ground measurement systems activated by Run 2 command. Oxidizer and fuel drain and safety valves of launch vehicle are closed.
The crew members in position about 3 minutes from launch, about T-minus 2 minutes 45 seconds. The booster tank will begin being pressurized for flight, and this will help optimize the flow of fuel and helps to add structural support to the rocket just before launch.
Booster propellant tank pressurization initiated. Launch lead visible lock 1. We are ready for the launch. And we are ready for the liftoff at 22:14:08. Copy all. This is launch lead.
Everything on track so far. Just over 2 minutes from launch, about 30 more seconds. The ground propellant feed will be terminated. and the Soyuz will be switched to internal power shortly after that. One minute 45 seconds from flight, or from launch. The umbilical towers, you can see, will be retracted here soon in the next minute. Soyuz vehicle now 1 minute from launch. A close-up view of the top of the vehicle, you'll see the first umbilical tower separate, beginning to separate right now. Vehicle on internal power. Now just under 30 seconds from launch. Ground
onboard power. Launch command issued for ignition.
Launch command has been issued. Second umbilical tower separated. Booster ignition.
Engine turbo pumps at flight speed. Engines at maximum thrust, lift off.
And liftoff. We have liftoff of Nick Hague, Christina Koch, and Aleksey Ovchinin, now on their way to the International Space Station.
10 seconds, the parameters are nominal. This is Verloc 1, everything's nominal.
Good first stage performance so far. The Soyuz delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust from its 4 boosters and single engine. The first stage of the Soyuz measures 68 feet in length, 24 feet in diameter, burning liquid fuel for the first 2 minutes, 6 seconds of the flight.
Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling great. Seconds, the vehicle is stable. Copy all. This is Verloc 1. Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling very well.
One minute into the flight, everything looking good so far. The vehicle itself is now traveling at more than 1,000 miles per hour.
Is a nominal. Copy all. This is Verloc 1. Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling well.
As we lose sight of the vehicle, transitioning to an animation, everything looking good so far. This first stage with the 4 strap-on boosters will continue to burn until 1 minute 58 seconds.
80 seconds, everything is nominal. Copy all. The crew is feeling great, everything is nominal on board.
Good reports to the crew. About 10 more seconds of this first stage.
Thermal control system parameters are nominal. Copy all. Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling well.
Good call that the escape tower has been jettisoned. On time, the 4 booster separations have been confirmed. That core stage continuing on as the second stage. The launch shroud will be jettisoned at 2 minutes 37 seconds into the flight.
The crew is feeling great.
Soyuz vehicle traveling well over 3,000 miles per hour.
140 seconds. The launch vehicle parameters are nominal. Copy all. Everything is nominal on board.
Good core stage performance. The launch shroud has been jettisoned. The rocket is now at 48 miles high.
The display 5 control descent display has been activated. illuminated. Copy all. 180 seconds. The vehicle is stable.
Good report so far. This core
Copy
stage will
all.
continue
This
to
is
burn
Berlak
until the
1.
4-minute,
Everything is nominal
43-second
on board.
mark.
The crew is feeling great.
Good reports from the crew. Over 3 minutes from launch, the Soyuz vehicle traveling about 5,000 miles per hour.
200 seconds. Second stage thrusters
Soyuz core
are
stage is
operating
performing as
nominally.
expected. That core stage, 56
Copy all.
feet in length, 13.5 feet in diameter, with a single engine and 4 fuel chambers, providing between 178,000 and 222,000 pounds of thrust for its 3-minute, 28-second burn. This stage will continue to burn until the 4-minute, 43-second mark. The Soyuz uses what's called a hot staging technique. It'll be the third stage will ignite while the second is still burning.
All. Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling well.
It'll happen in that lattice structure you see at the center of the vehicle of this animation. Over 4 minutes into the flight, everything looking good so far.
"250 seconds. Your pitch roll are nominal. Everything is nominal on board.
Four and a half minutes into the flight, everything looking good. About 15 seconds until the ignition of that third stage. Good separation of that second stage.
Second stage separation is confirmed. This is Berlak 1. I confirm that. Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling great. "310 seconds. The spacecraft is stable.
Good third stage performance, everything looking good. This booster will continue to burn until the 8-minute, 45-second mark. Just over a 4-minute burn.
330 seconds.
At this time, the Soyuz vehicle well over 100 miles above the Earth.
This is Berlak 1. Copy all. Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling well.
The single engine of the Soyuz's third stage providing 67,000 pounds of thrust. Again, burns until the 8-minute, 45-second mark into the flight. Now just over 6 minutes after launch.
360 seconds. Your pitch roll are nominal. Copy all. This is Berlak 1. Everything is nominal on board.
Six minutes, 30 seconds into the flight, crew feeling good. Everything looking good so far for this last stage before the Soyuz itself is inserted into orbit 8 minutes, 45 seconds after launch.
400 seconds. The spacecraft is stable. Copy all. Everything is nominal on board, and the crew is feeling great. This is Berlak 1. Copy all.
Over 7 minutes into the flight.
"430 seconds. Third stage thrusters are operating nominally. Copy all. This is Berlak 1. Everything is nominal on board, and the crew is feeling great. We are standing by for third stage separation at 22:56. Copy all.
Everything looking good, 7 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight. At this time, the Soyuz vehicle traveling well over 13,500 miles per hour. Once the third stage delivers the Soyuz to orbit and the module is separated, a series of pre-programmed commands will be executed to prepare the Soyuz for orbital operations. These stored commands, called time-tagged commands, allow many of the Soyuz's systems to be automatically activated by onboard computers at precise times stored in those computers.
Everything is nominal on board. The crew is feeling great. This is Burlock 1.
About 30 more seconds of this third stage burn and separation.
500 seconds. The flight is nominal. Everything is nominal on board. Burlock 1.
We have good third stage separation.
Third stage separation is confirmed.
Stage cutoff and separation occurring.
Burlocks, congratulations on the insertion, orbit insertion. Mission Control Moscow is standing by, and they're here.
The cruise antenna has deployed at this time.
Burlocks, Moscow, how copy? Moscow, this is Burlock 1. Have you loud and clear?
At this time, all the antennas and solar arrays are deployed.
Third stage separation was nominal. Everything is nominal on board, and we are feeling great. Copy all. We are working from page 35 of the Soyuz ODF. Copy. We are closing both RPVs, the airflow regulators, and we are controlling the TS indicator panels. We are standing by for your first measurement as part of leak checks. This is Burlock 1, copy all, Moscow.
Soyuz now in orbit, solar arrays deployed, and the Soyuz crew on their way to the International Space Station, docking just 6 hours from now. The Soyuz itself orbiting at an altitude of about 143 miles by 118 miles. The orbit will be raised systematically over the course of the next 2 days, placing it in close proximity to the International Space Station, systematically over the next 6 hours. The control of the spacecraft from here will be overseen from Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow, a view of what you're seeing now.
4 SR pressure, BO pressure, 812. 856, how copy? Copy all. Burlocks, did the air go through? Moscow, this is Burlock.
Again, the great launch of the Soyuz MS-12 crew, launching on time at 2:14 p.m. Central Time, 12:14 out at the launch site in Baikonur, March 15th. Everything looking good so far for the crew's trip to the International Space Station. A textbook ascent, and the Soyuz is in orbit, solar arrays deployed, and the crew is on their way, going to be docking later tonight, Central Time.
Affirmative. You will need to deactivate that.
We will be replaying some views of that launch for you, but as we are waiting for those to come in, please keep sending in your questions using the hashtag AskNASA. We have a question from Andre, who's asking, what are the astronauts doing right now? You're hearing some of the English translation now during this broadcast as the Soyuz commander Aleksey Ovchinin continues to work through some of those procedures for the flight of the Soyuz to the International Space Station. The Soyuz itself will be in communication with ground teams as long as the Soyuz is flying over those Russian ground stations in the northern hemisphere.
of the second set of course.
The International Space Station, currently 254 statute miles over the Pacific Ocean just east of Japan. The Soyuz, you can see right behind it on this map, going to be chasing it down over the next 6 hours. The crew on board the International Space Station just waking up and, of course, watching the launch of their crewmates.
Yes. 17.
They'll continue.
18, 17,
they have shifted
24,
their day
19,
to accommodate the arrival of the crew just 6 hours from now.
21.3.
You can tune in to our docking coverage at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:45 p.m. Central. Docking is scheduled to be at 9:07 p.m. Eastern, 8:07 Central.
17.5, 26, 370. 8.
Follow along on Facebook, NASA.gov, and NASA TV, wherever you are watching around the world. In the meantime, we have questions continuing to come in. Another one from Ray, asking, does the Soyuz capsule have rockets that propel it away from the booster in case of an emergency? Of course, during the ascent, that first stage with the 4 strap-on boosters burns for about 1 minute and 58 seconds. Just before the end of that burn, the escape tower that's at the very top of the vehicle is jettisoned. In the event of an emergency, that launch escape tower would pull the crew away from the speeding rocket and land the crew safely in the steppes of Kazakhstan. Of course, 2 crew members on board MS-12 today, Nick Hauge and Aleksey Ovchinin, witnessed that themselves during the abort shortly after launch of the MS-10 vehicle in October 2018.
Compass, we will be performing the manual test. And
another question from John, how fast is the International Space Station traveling while orbiting the Earth? A great question. The Soyuz vehicle went from 0 to 17,500 miles per hour in just about 9 minutes, about how fast the International Space Station is traveling. Over the next 6 hours, it'll get incrementally higher and higher, basically chasing down the International Space Station for an on-time docking 6 hours from now, 8:07 p.m. Central Time. During that time, as the vehicle is traveling that fast, the International Space Station and the Soyuz vehicle will make 4 orbits around the Earth.
2346. When is the next compass? 2346. Copy 2346.
Another question from Anne. What new scientific research are playing in the field of biology at the International Space Station? Over these past few weeks, there have been 3 crew members on board conducting experiments in all different kinds of fields. One particular experiment going on right now is the Veg-3 experiment. In this experiment, the International Space Station crew is growing various types of lettuce to see how it grows in the microgravity environment with different pillows or cases that provide nutrients, different lighting, basically maximizing how you can grow food in space in the event of long duration stays on other planets. Of course, the Expedition 59 crew will be conducting a series of biological experiments during their stay on board. One in particular is something called tissue chips. These are small thumb drive-sized devices that mimic the structure and function of human organs, being tested in space to see how the structure of whichever organ or tissue of the human body being replicated on those devices changes over time in space.
We have the angular build, and I am ready to send GA3 command. It's a go to send. At 22:31:08, the GA3 or GOL3 command is sent. Now, what about LED? Is it on? Yes, the LED of this command is illuminated now. Copy, that's great news.
You're getting a live look from the balcony of Mission Control Center just outside of Moscow. Teams here are monitoring the Soyuz vehicle, still in communication with the Mission Control Moscow. You're hearing those calls over to the television live as the Soyuz vehicle travels just over eastern Russia at this time, still in the range of some of those ground stations that are providing communication to the teams there in Moscow.
1.6, the period 88.8, the minimal altitude 199, and
the crew of Expedition 59 has successful launch at 2:14 p.m. Central Time today. Now, just about 18 minutes into their journey to the International Space Station, which will take just about 6 hours. Docking time at 8:07 p.m. Central Time this evening. From there, it'll take about 2 hours for them to open the hatches, where they will be welcomed by the then Expedition 59 crew currently aboard. Expedition 59 will formally begin once the Soyuz MS-12 vehicle docks to the Roscosmos module of the International Space Station.
Please proceed with your flight, and I wish you successful docking. Thank you so much. Everything is good on board.
We are currently waiting for launch replays that occurred just about 19 minutes ago.
Thank you so much.
In the meantime, continue to send in questions online using the hashtag AskNASA. We're following along and answering those live. We have one question from Noni, who's asking, good luck and safe journey to the crew of Expedition 59. If in the event of one crew member falling ill, will he or she be replaced? If you were tuning into our broadcast that occurred just before launch, we were on for about an hour. We were playing some of the, replaying some of the events that occurred just before the launch today. Expedition 59 crew members going through their pre-launch preparations, suiting up in the so-called launch and entry suits and providing leak checks. Next to them at the time was the Expedition 59 backup crew. Of course, about providing support along the way in a quarantined environment to remove them from any potential of falling ill. In the instance that a crew member did fall ill, a member of the backup crew will be able to replace them shortly before launch. But of course, on launch day, everybody reported healthy and went about a normal pre-launch preparation activities. Another question from Jacob, how long will launch take? The crew sits on the pad after ascending through the elevator just next to the Soyuz and gets situated in their seats a few hours before launch. The launch itself is about a 9-minute climb from the time it lifts off from the pad in Baikonur to the time it's inserted into orbit. This is a fast-track rendezvous for the Soyuz vehicle, sometimes taking 2.5 days to rendezvous with the International Space Station, in this instance taking just 6 hours and 4 revolutions around the Earth. So from the time that the Soyuz vehicle is lifted from the pad to the time that they are opening the hatches and entering the International Space Station for the first time, that whole time takes just around 8 hours. This next question comes from Justin, who's asking, what will happen with the spacecraft after docking with the International Space Station? Soyuz vehicle scheduled to dock to the Roscosmos module at 8:07 p.m. Central Time today. After it's docked, it takes about 2 hours from the time that it actually docks to the International Space Station to the time it opens up the hatches. Once it docks, it's basically pulled into the International Space Station and secured with latches. The crew, both on the Soyuz side and the International Space Station side, will perform leak checks. Once everything is secure, the crew inside the Soyuz vehicle will get out of their so-called launch and entry suits and change into their flight suits. All of this takes about 2 hours to safely make sure that everything is good before they open up the hatches just 2 hours later. Again, you're getting a live look from the balcony of Mission Control Moscow, a Mission Control Center just outside of the city of Moscow, Russia. Teams here still being able to communicate with the Soyuz crew on board MS-12, now tracking just east of Japan towards the edge of the coverage of some of those Russian ground stations. Everything looked good. It was a textbook launch at 2:14 p.m. Central Time. Everything performed nominally until just 9 minutes later. The Soyuz was inserted into orbit. Solar panels were deployed, and the crew is safely on their way to the International Space Station. Will begin incrementally raising their orbit to meet up with the space station just 6 hours from now. In the meantime, we are taking your questions live using the hashtag AskNASA. Keep sending those in. This next question comes from Tobo, who's asking, which countries currently have astronauts on the International Space Station? Right now, aboard the International Space Station, Expedition 58 crew members include NASA astronaut Anne McClain, Canadian Space Agency astronaut David Sanjok, and ROSCOSMOS cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko, representing 3 countries from around the world. Expedition 59 will formally begin just about 6 hours from now when the Soyuz vehicle docks to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station. In the vehicle is NASA's Nick Hague, NASA's Christina Koch, and Aleksey Ovchinin of ROSCOSMOS. When the crew is together to form Expedition 59, once the hatches are open just about 8 hours from now, there'll be 3 crew members from the United States, NASA, 1 from the Canadian Space Agency, and 2 from Russia, representing the space agency ROSCOSMOS. Soyuz MS-12 vehicle just over 25 minutes into its flight, tracking over the Pacific Ocean now. About to cross over the range of some of those Russian ground stations. You'll start to hear the calls from those crews get a little bit silent as they get away from those Russian ground stations. Get closer to the International Space Station, where communication will resume once it's within range. In the meantime, you're getting a live view from the balcony of Mission Control Moscow, who was communicating with the MS-12 crew during the launch and ascent of the vehicle into orbit. Everything looking good so far for that vehicle. An on-time docking scheduled just 6 hours from now. Currently waiting for launch replays to start rolling in. Coming up next, we'll go live with the docking coverage scheduled at 7:45 p.m. Central Time. Just about 20 minutes before the crew is scheduled to dock. Again, 8:07 p.m. Central Time. In the meantime, while we are waiting for some of those replays of the launch, keep sending in your questions using the hashtag AskNASA. Some great questions so far. This one comes from James. What will the spacewalkers be doing? Of course, 3 crew members on board MS-12 now. Aleksey Ovchinin, Nick Hague, and Christina Koch. Nick Hague and Christina Koch will consist of half of the spacewalking team of the next 3 spacewalks scheduled over the next few weeks. The other 2 being NASA's Anne McClain and David Sanjok of the Canadian Space Agency. These 3 spacewalks will take place over the next few weeks. The first 2 are scheduled to be conducted to basically replace batteries on the outside of the space station. The batteries they are replacing are nickel-hydrogen batteries. They'll replace them with lithium-ion. Basically, one lithium-ion battery can replace 2 nickel-hydrogen batteries. Those delivered on the Japanese HTV vehicle last year. The final spacewalk will be routing redundant power to the Canadian robotic arm, the Canadarm2, that serves as the mechanism to capture cargo vehicles to the International Space Station and served a great deal of responsibility in the construction of the orbiting complex. This next question comes from John. John is asking if the crew members of the Soyuz launch have time to take off their pressure suits before docking. Once the Soyuz vehicle docks to the International Space Station, the vehicle itself will be pulled in by some of the mechanisms that secure the docking. And it takes about 2 hours from the time of docking to the time they actually open up the hatches. In this time frame is a series of leak checks to just make sure that everything is good between the Soyuz vehicle and the International Space Station. After these leak checks are done and before the hatch is opened, the crew will have the time to get out of their seats, change out of their pressure suits, and into flight suits. Make sure to tune in to our coverage of hatch opening and welcome at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. This will come a bit early compared to the hatch opening itself, which will happen closer to approximately 10 p.m. Central. You'll see the crew members get out in their flight suits, take a few moments to get set up, and they'll begin a short welcoming ceremony to welcome the 3 new crew members aboard the International Space Station and have a chance to talk with friends and family that are currently positioned, that will be at the time, positioned in a hotel in Kazakhstan, not too far from the launch site that they lifted off from once the hatch opening ceremony resumes 8 hours prior. You're getting a live view. You're getting a live view of the balcony of the Mission Control Moscow. Very shortly here, we'll start to resume replays of the launch activities that occurred just about a half an hour ago.